Hey, what's up, Caleb? Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up, Kenshiro? How are you, man?
I'm well, man. How are you?
Yeah, good, good. Just
Nice.
invite.
Who do we need to get up here? I invited, I think, Astrographz and Connor, and is it who is it? Bray?
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay,
just invite to speak to.
cool. So while they come on, should we get started? Do you want to just tell us like a little bit about like how this came together, what it means to you, a little bit about yourself? I know that recently I had seen a tweet. You got elected to be like one of the top photographers by National Geographic in New Zealand or something like this. Congrats, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I mean, I'm like, if we go from the start, I've always been had like this thing with space where I've always loved it. I've always had a fascination with like the stars and the planets and stuff like that. And I started to take some of my own astro photos of maybe like 2, 3 years ago, and I was always finding myself out at like 2, 3, 4 in the morning trying to take some photos of the stars. And yeah, it's just like this passion that I've always had. And it's just grown more and more on me. And then sort of as I started to find some ENFTs of my own to buy, I came across some deep space stuff, and I was like, wow, this stuff is crazy. So I grabbed a few of my own, and then kind of from there I tried to find some more that were involved in it, but I couldn't find too many. So then I kind of had this idea. I kind of sat on it for a week or two, and I was like, this could be something cool. So I kind of went onto Instagram and found some artists that weren't quite involved in the scene yet, and their work was crazy. So I know that Bray had sold a piece before, and Cosmos Astro Art, who we have in here, has been involved in the scene for a while, but there are a few that weren't. So I came across their work. I sent them all a message, and they were all keen. I was like, yeah, no, this is good. This is going to be awesome. So I started to chat with them, and we started to form the whole plan and the idea of the project. And now we're up to this point here, and it's going really cool so far. And yeah.
Yeah, it's looking good. Hi, Bray. Hi, Connor. Nice to meet you guys. Thanks for joining us. Can you guys also just do and maybe chat after, just do a short intro about yourselves? Thank you.
Sure. Nice to meet you guys. My name is Bray. I've been an astrophotographer for quite some time now. I kind of got into it when I was 14 or so. I saw a Reddit post that said you could see Jupiter's moons with a pair of binoculars, and I was like, nah, there's no way. So I tried it, of course, and I saw Jupiter's moons. And from that moment, my mind is kind of like completely blown. And first thing I tried to do is take a picture of it with my iPhone to show my family, and that kind of spiraled out of control over the course of about 8 or 9 years now. I've been doing astrophotography, and it's become kind of a huge part of my life. All of the money I ever made as a teenager, all of the free nights I had was always under the stars. So it's one of the dominating factors in my life, and definitely one of the most inspiring types of photography, I think. But it's so difficult to do. I'm sure anyone who's done it before can relate. It's very niche and very expensive. But yeah, that's pretty much my story.
That's so cool. I got this same kind of feeling that you describe. I've never tried Cosmos photography, but the first time I saw like a CD-ROM like video game with like videos, or even the first time I put on a VR headset, I had this kind of like wow, just like amazement.
Yeah, you definitely get that feeling a lot. Sometimes it's not even about just taking the picture when you're out there under the stars. You just kind of have to sit there and enjoy it for yourself. The pictures are just so you can kind of get that experience shared to other people. But there's not really a whole lot of ways to convey the actual feeling of being out under dark skies by yourself.
The Cosmos.
Yeah, absolutely. I, pretty much have a similar story to Bray, and I think that goes for a lot of astrophotographers. A lot of us start off with just like a telescope and, maybe a pair of binoculars. And the first thing we always tried to do is, set our phone up to the eyepiece and just realize immediately how frustrating that is. Not the most ideal way to take pictures. And that was the first thing I did was I saw Jupiter and its moons as well. And the first thing I did was try to take pictures of it with my phone and realized, hey, there has to be a better way to do this. And then when I started reading all about how you can connect a camera to a telescope and just use it as a lens rather than a traditional lens, I was completely on board. I already had a camera, didn't really know how to use it, but at least I had one. And that was, the stepping stone for me. And it's been a huge part of my life ever since. And actually, I went to graduate school originally, so I was studying geology, and I had a plan to go into study like oil basins and stuff like that. And my professor ended up taking a sabbatical, and I was introduced to a planetary scientist at the university who was essentially like, hey, I hear you're really passionate about astronomy, and we need someone that can study the geology of Mars. And that's sort of what I've been into. So not only has astrophotography been like one of the biggest hobbies I've not only ever had, but like I guess what I've been most successful at. Like you don't want to see my wood carvings, but it's been just a huge part of my life from getting involved with like public places around Louisiana, from like being in museums to holding live telescope viewings around town and stuff. Just because so many people have never even looked through the moon or looked through a telescope at the moon, and if you never have, I still always recommend it.
What's wrong with your wood carvings?
No, wood carvings is me drilling holes in my desk to feed wires through currently for work.
I know that feeling. Nice to meet you. Hi, Cosmos. How are you?
Hey guys, what's up? Hey, thanks Ken for having me over, man.
Pleasure, man. How's it going? What are you up to?
Well, nothing. Just happy to be here with these legends. It's really great that Caleb invited me to take part in this project. So yeah, really happy to be here with these guys.
You were actually, I don't know, I know little to nothing about like Cosmos photography, but your work was, we kind of connected. I think I had seen like one of the pictures and then we had a chat quite a long, well, probably not that long ago, but it feels like so long just because this space moves so fast.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I got started back in February, and yeah, like you said, I mean, sounds like it was like ages ago. But I've been a fan of Bray's work, and I met Connor's work, and it's some really amazing photography. So I'm really happy to be part of this job with them.
Nice, man. So maybe I'll let Caleb, oh, sorry, and Shat, do you want to just intro yourself quickly, just for anyone who doesn't know you?
Sure. I'm not a photographer. I'm not an artist. I'm just some DJ collector that really loves NFTs. And I fell into the photography scene first by finding some nice Milky Way shots and snagged one of Caleb's Super Blood Moon piece. And I didn't realize like I was looking for some space stuff because I've always been a fan of space. More recently, I've been studying it so I can understand it better because it's just such an eye opener as to how small we are in the universe, and it's just such a mind fuck. But yeah, no, finding these guys, I'm a collector of most of them up here on stage. I'm really happy to see them collabing together to bring a project like this to the space. So I'm just super stoked about it.
Thanks for joining us. So I just want to hand it over to Caleb for a second, and maybe you just give us a quick intro overview of how you guys came together, if you know each other in real life, just the story of like how the project came to be, and anything you want to say about it. Then maybe if I see something like that I find really interesting, every once in a while I'll try to dive deeper into that. Otherwise, after you did an intro, we can just have a chat about a few things and maybe even let some people ask questions and something like that. But we'll kind of wing it. Cheers.
Yeah, well, I mean, this project, it all started based on the passion that I have for I have for space myself. So I've been a follower of some of these guys' works for a while, especially Cosmos Art, who's apparently just jumped out of space. But I've seen his moon photos for ages and ages now, and I take my own photos of the moon and stuff like that as well, and it's kind of hard to explain the enjoyment that you get out of doing stuff like that, like being out at night when you're underneath the stars or the moon, and it's just yourself and the camera and stuff like that. Yeah, it's hard to explain, but it's an amazing feeling. And
How
then
did
like
you
when you
get
get
into it actually? Sorry to interrupt, but as in because I haven't tried it myself, and I think for many people, perhaps the barrier to entry is they think they need to get like a telescope that costs like 10 grand or something. What is the easiest way for somebody to get started trying this?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a lot easier than people actually think. Like, if you just have like a standard DSLR camera, or even on your phone, it's crazy that you can take photos. You can take photos on your phone now, and they come out like insanely good as well. But you just need like a standard tripod. Really, you aim a camera up at the stars, and you just need to do like a long exposure. And if you understand how to take like a basic photo, then it's going to turn out quite great. Like as long as you take yourself out of like a main city or something, so you're not like in the center of light pollution. But yeah, it's a lot easier than people think. And how I started my part-time job when I was about 16. And there was a friend there who took photos of the stars himself, and I already had a camera and I was taking photos of landscapes and stuff like that. But I didn't have my car, I didn't have my driving license at that time yet. So he invited me out to go take photos of the stars one night, and that's kind of where I first started doing about 4 years ago now. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. But yeah.
Nice. And then from there, you've been specializing in kind of like more traditional photography and Photoshop, or what has your career arc been like?
Well, I mean, for like with the work that I do with it, or involved on Twitter and stuff like that, because I am full time as well, like outside of all the NFT stuff as well.
Yeah, just for example, other than this collection, which I think is kind of like a niche thing you're doing at the moment. Normally, I think you do like car photography, and then also, can you tell us about? I interrupted you before about the National Geographic thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I take all sorts of photos, but some of the main client work I do is automotive stuff and real estate work as well. Won't go too much into the real estate stuff because that's quite boring. But yeah, that's all the kind of work that I do as my full-time job. But going back to the National Geographic thing, I took a photo. So there's one blood moon shot that I have that Chet ended up collecting that I've got on my foundation. But then there's one more that I dropped in my moon series as well. That's on OpenSea, and that was taken on the same night. And sort of, it was probably a few weeks after I took that photo. They had the competition running. National Geographic had the competition running. They do it every year, and I applied with a couple photos, including that one blood moon one, and then I got a email back saying that I've been shortlisted. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. We're trying to wait on more information about the competition, but yeah.
Nice, man. Congratulations. So, how did you and is it you and Bray and Connor and Cosmos and Shat who are behind the project, or who are the 5 people?
It's Bray, Connor, Cosmos, and we've got we have Astro Burns, who couldn't make it here, and Trevor Jones as well, who couldn't make it here for the space here today as well. But if someone can, like Bray, could you pin some of Trevor's work? I'll try to go out and pin some of their work real quick.
Yeah, I'll find some.
So, can you tell us, in the meantime, just a bit more about the collection in general?
Yeah, so I mean, my kind of idea behind the collection was just to have like one photo per subject that we choose from in the series. So like if there's a photo of like the Andromeda galaxy or something like that, there's only going to be like one photo of that in the series. So it's kind of like you own a piece of the universe in a kind of way. That's the idea behind why there's only one per subject. And then outside of that, there are a couple subjects like we have moon photos where we just have the full moon shot from Cosmos. Then we have a blood moon shot from Bray and a eclipse shot from Bray as well. But yeah, I mean the whole idea behind the collection as a whole is just that I hadn't seen it been done before. I loved all the photos of deep space that I'd seen before, and I just need to find some artists that had awesome work, and I found these 5, and I freaked out at their work, and yeah, I just had to get them aboard and onto the project as soon as I saw their work.
That's awesome. How did you guys choose what to include, and how many pieces are in the collection?
Yeah, so when we come in and got them all involved, I asked them all a bunch of questions about like what subjects would be good, and we made like a list of all of the names that they suggested we have as subjects, and then from there they all sent in the photos of each subject, and then I just kind of picked between the 5 of them, like who the photo that I thought was the best per subject, and I had some people help me out with the curation of each photo as well, and that was crazy hard to pick from because every single photo from all of them are all amazing. So that was probably the hardest part of the project, because I'd sit there at my computer with 2 photos of the same subject. They're both just as good as each other, and it was crazy hard to pick between each person for the photo.
I have the same issue when buying art, like sometimes I'll make a deal with an artist, like to choose one from his portfolio, and I managed to trim it down to like 3, and then it's just like, like how do you choose?
Yeah.
I think that one thing that's kind of funny that I like to talk about whenever I like explain astrophotography to people is that it's kind of like we're given, a bunch of models, but we're all photographers. We have to shoot that same exact model with the same lighting. Really, like it sounds like all of our pictures would end up the same. But not only do they all end up different, but I'm sure, Bray can attest to this as well. If I ever see an image of, say, maybe like the Heart Nebula or something, I can generally pinpoint it exactly who took that photo. If I see a picture of the Heart Nebula from Bray, and like even if there's no credit attached to it, I know like that is Bray's style, that is Bray's photo. Which like if you gave 20 different photographers a model, I think it might be a little bit harder to see just those creative differences between each artist.
How can you see that in like Cosmos photography? What's like his signature that you see?
It's so funny that you asked that because it's strange. I don't know that, and I don't know what it is. It's just a feeling that each artist applies to their photo. Like for Bray, it's almost like uh, maybe like an etherealness with the way he treats his stars in photos. For Cosmos, it's almost like a dreamy aspect that's in a lot of his photos that I think a lot of people don't capture. And I've always thought that when I was like coming up in astrophotography, and to have other people tell me they do the same thing to me, like they immediately recognize my photos out of a lineup, it's almost strange.
Well, it's like that with the great artists with the paintings as well. Actually, what I suggest artists is like to, you found your voice when like people see the work and it's like, oh, that's from that artist. They don't need to look at who it was. They just know.
Exactly, and I hope people can really see those differences like between all of our art within the collection. Like, yeah, we're all, it's a bunch of different images of space, but there's just so much variety in the collection between like all of these like amazing people that we have in this group where there is always like some sort of like flavor that I think everyone will enjoy.
Yeah, so right now the Crescent Nebula that's pinned, like, can you describe what we're actually looking at?
Yeah, so this this is kind of the shockwave of a Wolf Rayet star, which is a star that like wildly changes its activity, and the radiation and the pressure that comes off the star creates this kind of big shockwave. Um, you can see there's a couple different structures to the shockwave as well. There's this blue outer shell, and there's this red inner shell. And kind of the cool thing about how that got there, and also this applies to what we were talking about earlier of how we can identify each other's work, is you get those features through these things called narrowband filters. So you could either present an object in natural light, like red, green, blue, or you could image it with these special filters that only allow in the light from a certain gas emission line. So for example, you can look at the hydrogen alpha emission, the oxygen 3 emission, sulfur 2, nitrogen 2. There's a whole bunch of specific gases you can look at. And we have filters to isolate those. And the problem is all of these images are black and white, so there is no natural way to build the color. So you end up getting total creative freedom in how you want to arrange the colors in a picture. So you can often identify, someone's style based on what their colors are in the nebula. And the other advantage is it gives you this nice contrast, like seeing this blue shockwave. That's an oxygen shockwave. So anytime you see blue in this picture, that comes from the oxygen 3 emission, but it's very hard to see without those kinds of filters. And I think for this image, also the red would be the hydrogen alpha emission. So, I mean, not only is it like a representation of creativity, but you can also see what gases are where actually in space based on what the colors are.
Do you mean that you actually shoot in black and white and add the color?
Yeah, exactly. So for me and a lot of other astrophotographers, all our cameras are black and white, and you get the advantage of more sensitivity, more resolution, and then you do have to end up choosing the colors in the end. But yeah, all of the images will just be black and white as you capture them, and then you assign the colors later on.
Oh, very cool. So you can use like a DSLR camera or a telescope to do this, and then you do the editing in Photoshop?
Not just in Photoshop. Photoshop is a big part of my workflow, but it's mainly for post-processing or curves, contrast, saturation, that kind of thing. Most of the software we use is specialized for this kind of photography. There's programs like Deep Sky Stacker, it's a good free one. I use a program called PixInsight, which is kind of a all-in-one solution for astronomy processing. But all of the software is very specialized for it because there are a bunch of extra technical needs that Photoshop can't supply you, like how you deal with calibrating out the camera and optical problems by taking calibration frames like darks or flats. Photoshop can't really handle those at all, and you need that specialized capability that like PixInsight or other softwares could give you to edit.
And are you doing this astrophotography full time now, and or when did you like come to realize that you can make a living out of this, and did you ever really think it would be possible?
So right now I'm doing aerospace engineering. I write computer code for helicopter engines, but I'm actually planning on switching into doing this full time. My kind of 5-year plan that I had last year was I'm going to work at like NASA or SpaceX, and then after a couple of years, I'm going to start to pursue my passion. And then over time, I realized why wait the 2 or 3 years to do what I actually love to do. I can make it happen now. So I'm getting ready to transition into just doing this full time.
That's amazing. Do you consider yourself more of like an artist or a scientist, or like how do you like define it?
I would define it definitely as art. Connor can speak a lot to the science part of it. There's a observational astronomy is very different from producing pretty pictures. The two can go hand in hand. Like you could use scientific data to produce something pretty, like with the Hubble images, but oftentimes they're not going out to, collect that data just for pretty pictures. And the majority of it is actually really ugly images from the Hubble Space Telescope. So I would classify it more as art.
How long does it take to capture something like a Crescent Nebula?
Uh, it can take anywhere from like a couple minutes to as long as you want it to be. So the thing with astrophotography and with stacking any images at all is the more you stack, the less the noise. And the goal is as much time as possible to get the cleanest image possible. And not only that, there's actually a diminishing returns effect. So every hour you add to a capture or like a total image session, its ability to decrease your noise goes down. So in order to like really reduce your noise, you have to build up insane amounts of data. I think the longest I've ever shot an image for was 66 hours of exposure time. And this is split up over multiple weeks or a month, just every night, hammering exposures on one object, basically. So there is a ton of patience that comes with this kind of photography. And it's especially tough when you're starting out, because what you want to do is you want to look at all these cool things in the night sky, look at Andromeda, look at Triangulum, look at Orion Nebula. But to produce the best image possible, you just want to stick with one thing and stay with it for multiple nights. So it takes a lot of time.
Nice. Hi, Connor. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I was going to add on to what Bray said about like how when you start off, pretty much everyone always wants to shoot so many things in their first night. I remember like every night I got a new telescope. I would shoot 6 different objects in a single night, which might end up having less than an hour of exposure on each photo. So like the photos weren't great by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, there's actually a photo in this drop that I put like over 2 years of work into, and it's got like 120-ish hours of exposure with it, and like it is just one of the most like immaculately clean, noise-free images I've ever produced. But it's just all part of that patience. And like, granted, like so Bray was mentioning it earlier, but like I'm on more of the science side, whereas like it's what I do for a living is the science, and I have access to like an observatory that's fully automated and shoots every single clear night. So I used to, lose loads and loads of sleep every single night while I was in college. Uh, Now it's nice, like the observatory just runs, while I sleep, sort of thing. But it really does help, get those numbers up there. And I think in total, like just from my images alone, like I'm not sure about Bray, Cosmo, or anyone else in the drop, but we're at well over 1,000 hours of just pure exposure, which is just, leaving the camera shutter open and seeing what photons from outer space fall on your sensor.
Wow. Because actually, what you just explained is like the concept of photography, right? Can you explain like how we capture light and like how we see an image?
Yeah, absolutely. So like what Bray was saying about like, the exposure time is just, so you have like your DSLR, and whenever you hear that sound, whenever you take a photo, that's the sound of your camera opening up its shutter to let light in to hit its sensor and then closing. And normally that sound is just a because it's fractions of a second. Whereas whenever we do photography, we'll generally have 10-minute, 30-minute gaps between that opening and that closing, and that's just because if we opened our camera shutter for a fraction of a second, these photons are traveling thousands and thousands of light years, sometimes millions of light years, for that single photon to end up on our, tiny 1-inch squared camera sensor. So you want to give them as much of a chance as you can to actually land. So that means, the more exposures you take, the more time you essentially have to, get those couple photons onto your sensor to help build this image. It's kind of like filling like, like your 5-gallon Home Depot bucket with like a, drip of water. Like you want to hold it under the faucet for as long as possible, even though it's incredibly slow.
How do you find these? Does your equipment, do you put in like GPS coordinates, or is it like manual, or how does that work?
So you can manually do it, but the issue is that the sky rotates throughout the night, right? So whenever you're doing these really long exposures, you need a mount on your telescope that can move your telescope with the sky. If you don't have that mount, if you were to expose for even a single second, your image would be entirely blurred because it might not seem like it when you just go outside and look at the stars, but whenever you're looking at the stars, they are moving across the sky all night long. And whenever you're dealing with these really high magnifications, you end up uh, seeing these stars move in a matter of less than a second. So you need those mounts to track across the sky. And even though like the sky's rotating all night long, it's more so the Earth is rotating. Like these nebulas aren't, flying to different spots of the galaxy every single night. So where they are is actually pretty well known, and within our lifetime, they won't really move from where they are. So we know their coordinates. We place those coordinates into the telescope, and all the telescope has to do is just rotate with the sky, and then it can just stay locked onto that target all night long.
Nice. But you can't just let it run on autopilot. You actually have to like stay up all night and like click, or how does that work as well?
So that's kind of where like I what Bray was mentioning earlier about like how sometimes things get expensive and that you can pay a lot of money to like automate the entire process where you have software that checks to see if the sky is clear. If the sky is clear, then your roll-off roof will open. But like when I first started, it was 6 p.m. while it's still bright outside. Walk outside with my telescope, set everything up, type the coordinates of whatever I wanted to shoot into like the little controller on my mount, point to the object in the sky, and then let the mount rotate while I sat up all night, like clicking the exposure button on my laptop to help, just have it, not fail on me in the middle of the night. That is definitely where I would say a majority of astrophotographers fall into that range. And that's just because like it's also part of the fun, like a lot of people, myself included, would love to stay up all night and just stargaze. That's why we do it. We love space. We love to look at the stars. And staying up all night is like, yeah, it can be a little bit tedious at times, but there really is just so much joy associated with it.
Do you think we're ever gonna be able to teleport?
That's a tough one. I kind of like to equate a lot of these images to teleporting themselves, because you're seeing images that are thousands, millions of years old. And like a lot of people know that, like a lot of people know, like when you look at an image of a nebula, you're looking, thousands of years into the past or whatever. Same with galaxies. But what really blows my mind is that whenever you look at some pictures of galaxies that might be 20 million years away, 20 million light years, in the background of those, there might be a galaxy that's a billion light years away. So you're simultaneously seeing something 1 billion years old, 20 million years old at the same time, even though they are completely different. Sorry, I fell unlocked. Even though they're completely different, like spatially, you are seeing them both at the same time, despite their 980 million year difference in age.
That's pretty crazy. Cosmos, what's up, man? You wanna tell us a little bit about your work with the project?
Hey, yeah, sure. So basically, I kind of think of myself as a guest in this project because I don't really do deep space stuff. I mean, I do that, but the only piece I have in this collection is one of my moon images. And just listening to these guys, I have to say, man, they're so humble because they make it sound easy. And I've been shooting deep space images for quite a few years now. And let me tell you, they're nowhere near to what these guys are producing. So this is basically, their deep sky images, and I'm like going along with them with one of my lunar images, because actually, like lunar imaging is quite different in many respects to deep space imaging. So yeah, that's what I'm basically going with.
So you chose to focus and specialize on the moon?
Well, I'm kind of like slowly building my deep space knowledge and processing and know-how. Because, like I said, these guys make it sound easy, but there's so much to learn. There's like this huge um, learning curve, and it's also you have to like accompany it with gear updates and software and everything. So at least for me, it's like a very small road. Um, Also, I live like in a very light polluted city. So basically, all that deep space stuff is kind of forbidden for me until I start doing these narrowband images that Bray was saying, like with these special filters. But the moon, you can shoot from almost anywhere. It doesn't matter if you have light pollution, it's like a very generous target. So I kind of been like really, specializing in that with my current like setup. Um, so yeah, that's basically like every night going out and shooting at the moon. And what's strange is that I don't know about the other guys, but like when you start out, the moon is like a really cool subject, but very fast it's like number one enemy of astrophotography because moonlight will really like dim out the rest of the sky. And the best time for deep space imaging is when there's actually no moon outside. But like I said, living in these very light polluted skies, mostly the only target I have is the moon. So I started shooting it and, going night after night. And now, believe it or not, when the moon is not out, I kind of miss it.
Is the sky kind of polluted with satellites, and is it getting harder to get clear shots, or is that just kind of like rumors?
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, Bray and Connor can speak to this, but I think like mostly near sunrise and sunset is when we get to see more satellites. I mean, they're up all night, but they don't have their own light. They just reflect the light of the sun. So when the sun is still not really too low on the horizon, we can see the satellites. So like from sunset until I don't know midnight, and then in the first hour before dawn or something, it's really active. And yeah, it's insane the amount of satellites that have been launched, in the past couple of years. So yeah, I don't know, guys. Is it really a problem for you guys?
For deep sky stuff, it's actually not too much of a problem at all. Just because of the nature of the stacking of hundreds of images, there's some special algorithms that can say, oh, this pixel is like 3 times as bright as all the other pixels from all the images. And we can say, let's kick out those pixels that were too bright. And so you can basically ignore every single satellite that pops up from the data set pretty well. I think where it becomes more of a big problem if you're doing stuff like Caleb, where you're doing wide angle Milky Way and you're not really stacking, you're just doing one exposure, and then one big satellite streak might ruin your perfect exposure and you might have to wait a couple minutes. But for deep sky, it's not so much of an issue.
Oh, okay, so you don't have to actually drop that complete frame. You can just like it'll average out the satellite streak.
Yeah, exactly. So when you go stack every single picture, there's this thing called pixel rejection algorithms. I use one called Winsorized Sigma clipping, where basically, let's say you have one pixel, there's a satellite in one of the frames. You look at the distribution of the brightness values for that one pixel, and you can say, is this too many standard deviations away from what that pixel normally was in brightness? And you can say,
Right.
let's reject that, but keep the rest of the frame. So you can, reject what's bad and keep everything that was still good from that frame.
Oh, cool. Well, you see, Ken, that's what I'm talking about. These guys are so skilled. Like, people will sometimes think, oh yeah, you got like all this automated gear, but still having your gear automated just means that you can go like deeper into the rabbit hole and dedicate more work and get even more involved with the technical stuff. So it's really admirable what these guys do.
Yeah, there's like a proverb in Italian, and it's something like the engineer gets paid $2 million just to go to the factory to fix one screw, but it took him like 30 years to figure out where that screw is.
Yeah, totally, man.
So, Caleb, can you just give us a roundup of the project, kind of like the more sales and marketing aspect, I guess?
Yeah, so I mean, the whole kind of idea that I touched on a bit earlier is there's going to be one photo per subject in the series, apart from the moon stuff, where we have the full moon, the blood moon, and the eclipse. But apart from that, all other subjects, there's only going to be one image of each. And in regards to all the other details, they're not quite out yet. They'll be out next week because we're still trying to choose what kind of plan we're going to go with for the drop. But I can say that the drop's going to be on Saturday next weekend. I won't drop the time quite yet, but it's going to be on Saturday next weekend. That's when the drop's going to be out.
On OpenSea?
Yeah, it'll be on OpenSea, yeah.
Okay, and do you already know, or if you can't say now, no problem, but kind of in terms of will you drop, is it 100 pieces or how many, and will they all be at once on auction, or is it fixed price?
Yeah, so there's going to be 75 images in the series, and it's going to be at a set price, so it's not going to be on auction. They're all going to be at a set price, which we'll announce at the start of next week as well.
Awesome. And you guys split it between 5 artists, the work, so 75 photos. And how is it split in terms of like, was it curated in any way to depict certain themes, planets, galaxies?
Yeah, so we made a big list of each subject, and then based on that list of subjects, I created a folder for each artist, and they send in all the photos that they have of the subjects in that list. And then from there, each photo was picked out from across all the artists to be displayed as the photo for that subject that was picked.
Nice. And for you, what do you see as the future? As in, like after this collectible series launches, what are your plans? What is your focus, and what are your objectives?
Yeah, well, I mean, the plan from this is to kind of push more deep space photographers into this NFT scene. That was kind of the whole idea behind this project. It's a type of work that I think it's not really appreciated as much as it should be right now. So I see this project as a real good gateway for all sorts of other artists to get involved in this scene. And then in regards to the drop, so the first drop's only got 75 images, but there is some talk and plans that we won't go into too much detail on yet. About trying to like reward the first collectors in the series. So like if on this first drop there'll be some rewards for the people that buy this first drop, because the total images in the series, if we do one more drop after this, it's not going to be as big as the first drop, but it's going to include some photos that go into either a bit more detail onto each subject or are a bit more zoomed out and include more than one of each subject in one photo kind of thing. So you could call it a group shot in a kind of way.
Do you have a favorite planet or star or galaxy that you like to shoot?
Well, me myself, I don't do any deep space stuff, but I do take heaps of photos of moons and the stars as a whole. But based on this series, going through all the photos, I'd say one of my favorite subjects would have to be the sorry, I've got a bit of a stutter. The Andromeda Galaxy by Bray. That photo in the series and the subject as a whole is it's so beautiful.
Bray, can you tell us a bit more about the Andromeda Galaxy?
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Caleb. So this galaxy is, I think, the furthest object you can see with your naked eye. It's kind of our galactic neighbor, and it's actually going to collide with our own galaxy, I think in like 5 billion years or something. It's pretty interesting, but this particular shot, I shot it during a road trip, a 3-day road trip I took out to Mount Whitney in Southern California. And I had 3 nights with 8 hours per each night, and I decided, you know what, I'm just going to spend every single night of this road trip just taking pictures of this one galaxy. And we'll just get this galaxy out of the way and, get the best picture I've ever gotten of it. And this was pretty much the result of it. So this is 24 hours of exposure, a whole day on the road to to produce this one image.
And also, if those want to have a quick peek at the image, it's pinned at the top of the space there, if you want to go have a look.
And how about you, Connor? Do you have a favorite place to shoot?
So my favorite place to shoot would definitely be these farm roads near my house, actually. I've always loved them, and part of the reason I've always loved them so much is because it was actually the first place I ever saw the Milky Way with my own eyes. It was always something that I never really knew that you could see on your own. And then I looked up the light pollution map one day and saw that the Milky Way was visible maybe 30 minutes from my house. So I took a drive out there one night and just saw this giant stream of stars streaming across the sky, or sorry, giant streak of stars streaming across the sky. And honestly, you know, it was like one of those like weak in the knees, tears in the eyes sort of moment where I never realized just how beautiful like the place we live was, and until that moment. It was like a very defining time of my life.
Very nice. Okay. Do you guys want to add anything, or does anyone from the crowd want to come up and ask any questions? Hi, Amit. How are you? Are you there, Amit? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. It was just into that transition period. Hey everyone. Hey Caleb. Nice to talk to you. And hey Bray. I've been following your work. Real inspiration. You like every time I go onto your Instagram page, it's just inspiring. And hey Connor, I was just listening to Connor's story about how 30 minutes away he went had a look at the stream of stars, and it was just totally different. It was kind of a similar experience for me when I first moved to New Zealand, and it was this was 2012 when I was not even doing astrophotography, but I grew up in India, and it was a scary place. I was afraid of the dark, but I took this drive with a friend, and I just got out of my car, the lights turned off, and you see this beautiful stream of stars, just the Milky Way at its full glory, and it's just a totally different experience, and that's what got me into it. But what I wanted to ask was to Bray. Now I've seen a lot of your shots, and I've been trying to gather all my gear for the last few years, and only this year I've got to a position where I've got a proper mount so I can put it in my driveway. I know you've got a Paramount. How was that transition? Did you go through a few different, iterations, or did you just jump straight into the deep end?
Yeah, thanks for all the kind words, Amit. It's makes me feel very nice. So for my like kind of gear progression, I started out with just a camera and a tripod. From there, I added a star tracker to the setup. I used that for a couple years. I was basically always limited by money since I was 15, 16, 17 when I was doing this. Eventually, I saved up enough for a telescope mount, and that's going to be kind of the bedrock of the whole setup. I think I got a Orion Atlas, a used one. It was like 10 years old or something, so it was a little beaten up, but it definitely did the job. And then from there, I just used it with the camera lens. Then I added the telescope, then the auto guiding, and then the CCD. So I took everything very incrementally. And I think there are some advantages to taking everything incrementally and being limited by how much capital you have to spend on the gear, because then you're kind of forced to learn every single piece in its entirety before you have enough money for the next piece of the setup. And you kind of learn as you go instead of, taking it all at once, which can be a little overwhelming, I think.
Yeah, totally. No, pretty much the same. Except here in New Zealand, there isn't enough secondary market for astrophotography gear, and buying anything from the States is just expensive. So it's we'll get there. Well, the New Zealand secondary market will get there. I've seen like just during the lockdown period, the sales have gone through the roof for every telescope and every astrophotography gear. So yeah. Oh, nice to know that. Cool, man.
Thanks, man. Nice to meet you. And I wanted to ask, has any astro or deep space photographer or cosmos photographer had success in the NFT space already, or is this the first time you guys are kind of like launching a big collection like this?
I can say I've been fortunate enough in the last few weeks. One of my very first collectors shared as in the audience, and I couldn't believe that when I saw the email come through that he's bought one of my images, I just couldn't believe. And that was my first deep sky image of the Eta Carina Nebula, very special to me, as that is how well, apart from Orion, Eta Carina was the target that I started learning astrophotography on. So it's a very special image. But in the last few weeks, I posted 10 a collection of 10 images that have been my journey over the last 8 years. And all of them are sold, 8 of them are sold, and only 2 remain. So I can say I've been fortunate enough in this area. When I started, it was quite hard to get into the spaces and actually, sell myself, especially with the deep sky imaging, when there are other people who are talking about all their stories about how they've taken a few hikes, they've crossed mountains, and then come across these beautiful lakes and the Milky Way. Whereas all I had to say was, I go into my driveway and shoot. So, there wasn't a lot of story to tell, but once I started meeting all these people and talking to people and tell them how far away they are, and just describe these images, it kind of changed things. It caught their attention, and people started going to the collection, and a lot of people just kind of resonated with it, and they loved it. So yeah, fortunately, in the last 2 weeks, I've sold 8 images.
Did your audience come from like the NFT space or the crypto space or the photography space? How did you build your audience and who is buying your pieces?
What my audience, I've found, well, I've had 2 collectors pick up my images. So what I started doing was make more connections. Cosmos, he invited me to his Discord channel, have a chat there, and then just going across Twitter, looking at other people's images. Even so, just commenting on their images, going to their profile and looking at the images and talking about that work. That kind of organically helped me. So a lot of my collectors have been other artists.
Yeah, Kenneth, let me just say, I think what Amit said was really important, that like we, participate in these spaces and we talk about our work and the process involved behind it. Because sometimes I think we might, like take it a bit for granted, or we just, get lost in the technical details. But I like to do like these really, well, I kind of long threads about how I do my work and how much, how many images go into it, and describe a bit of the process, because astrophotography is really technical. And I find that those are really helpful to, to get the audience engaged and collectors. And, in the past few months, I think also collectors have been like really interested in learning more about processes, getting to know who they're collecting from, how much work went into the piece. I think a couple of months ago, we saw a lot of cases of work just being like plagiarized, or, just basically being stolen from other artists and everything. So I think it's really cool that we like get out there and share our process and share all the information about these objects, and how far away they are, and how hard it is to shoot them, and how cool it is to shoot them as well. I think deep down, most people really love space and enjoy, space, and looking out into the night sky and looking out to the moon and everything. So if we just connect, that I think that will really go a long way for astrophotography, and I think it's really picking up as well.
Yeah, it would be nice to learn more, because I think I know nothing about it, but I am fascinated by it. So even just like learning from you guys by seeing the images and like a little bit through osmosis, it's like, yeah, it is like there is nothing quite like just like looking into like the night sky and just like questioning everything.
Yeah, and I mean, what's really, really insane or mind blowing to me is like technology has developed so much in the past, I don't know, 10, 15 years. then with just a regular amateur telescope and a DSLR, you can actually capture these things. You don't have to look at Hubble images or NASA stuff just to do this and to connect with space. And to me, that's just mind blowing.
Awesome. So yeah, Caleb, anything else? You guys, anyone, any closing remarks? And otherwise, awesome to meet you guys. And please do share more details once you have the exact date, time, and all that. But yeah, I'll let you have the floor, Caleb. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, cheers, Consider. I mean, I'm just going to ask if anyone has any questions. If you just request to speak, I'll add you as a speaker so you can come up and ask us some questions. So if anyone wants to talk, if you just do that now, I'll bring you up here to chat. I also want to bring up Ronan Hunt here, who takes his own deep space photos. It'd be quite interesting to hear his input across the conversations that we just had. Are you there, Ronan?
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry, I was just listening in.
Yeah. Do you have any questions about the conversation that we just had?
Sorry, 2 seconds. I'm not set up.
You're all good.
Nice to meet you.
So those who don't know Ronan, he's also an astrophotographer who takes some awesome photos out there in deep space.
What is your profile picture, Ronan? I guess he's having connection issues.
Yeah, that's probably the space. It can be like that.
Was there someone? Oh, yeah. Hi, we can hear you now. What's up?
Yay. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to speak. I had my headphones in and I was listening in to one side while I was doing something else.
No big deal.
Yeah, how are you getting on, guys? Great to see the collection coming together, and yeah, great to speak to everybody in real life for the first time. And been following a lot of you guys online for quite a few years now, and a lot of you guys are kind of inspirations to me as well. So yeah, it's great to speak to everyone. Well, I actually did have a question in the back of my mind and I'll throw it out to the floor to all the guys who put the collection together. Where do you think the future of astrophotography is going? What's the new technology that's going to land, that's going to change everything? Is it going to get more accessible to more people? Like what's next? What do you think the future holds? So I'm going to throw that one out to everybody.
I would say, in my mind, the best thing that's happened to astrophotography and is continuing to happen is camera sensors, especially ones that are affordable, are becoming more and more widely used. Even within the past, 5 years, the amount of sensitivity you can get in a camera sensor has just gone through the roof for astrophotography. And it's no longer limited to just those crazy black and white cooled CCDs. Now we have companies like ZWO putting out traditional CMOS sensors. So I think that is the best aspect that would bring astrophotography to a wider audience.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of just making images better, what I've been seeing more and more of is the active optics and adaptive optics. I think that is the future for bigger telescopes. I've done a lot of work with the Discovery Channel telescope, which is 4.3 meters in diameter, and the amount of detail it can achieve by making an artificial star and then moving its mirror many times a second to counteract the disturbance in the atmosphere is mind-blowing. And to see that technology trickling down to amateurs is just absurd.
Wow. Do you think you would be able to get an adaptive optics telescope in our back garden in 10 years time?
I would really hope so. I would love to see that. But even just seeing the active optics come to the amateur side in the past couple of years, which is great for planetary images, especially. But that is the limiting factor for all of us is the atmosphere. And to see, these, tools that professional scientists have had to sort of minimize the atmosphere other than shooting a telescope into space, to like see amateurs getting access to that now is just something I did not think I would see in my lifetime.
Yeah, that's absolutely awesome, isn't it? I can't wait. Yeah, that's me. Thanks for calling me up to chat, Caleb. Really good to speak to everybody, and looking forward to see the collection.
Ronan, can I ask you about your profile picture?
Yeah, that's the Triangulum Galaxy M33. Yeah, so that's another one of our galactic neighbors. Not quite as big and bright as Andromeda, but it's quite a nice little one.
Why do you like it?
It's a little bit more, it's a little bit more understated, I guess. It's a little bit more subtle.
It's not mainstream.
Yeah, it's not quite as in your face as M33.
Awesome.
All right.
Hey, Brian, what's up?
Hey, how's it going? It's been a true pleasure listening to you guys chat. I'm super excited for this drop. Caleb and Bray and Cosmos and Connor and everybody have put together just an amazing collection of images. I just wanted to ask Connor real quick. He mentioned one of the images he put up there. I mean, I saw the lobster claw is just beautiful. You said one of them had over 100 hours of exposure time, and I was just curious to know which one that is.
So that one would be, it's a 2-panel mosaic I have of the Dragon Nebula in Aura, which I think Caleb can share. I think that was shared recently. So it's not, it wasn't posted on Twitter yet, but it's a mosaic including the Dragon Nebula and then what I like to refer to as its egg, which is another one of those like pre-supernova nebula where you have like a star just degassing and creating like a beautiful shell around it. Yeah, I don't. Caleb probably knows how to share it. I wish I knew how to share it on here. Sorry, I'm still new to Twitter.
What's the name of the subject? I've just got the folder up right now.
I just shared it, I think. Is it 21 hours of exposure lobster claw nebula?
So it's actually, it has around 120 hours on it. It's the dragons and the egg, I think, is what I named the file. Either that or maybe it's just the egg or NGC 6164, I think is its technical designation.
Yeah, I don't think we shared that one through the account yet. I don't think that's posted on Twitter yet.
No, yeah, it's not posted on Twitter yet. I thought we might have shared the dragon, but I'm not sure. There's so many images that I'm just, getting lost in all of them at this point. But that is the one that has the over 100 hours, and I think it's the only image I've ever had that has gone over 100 hours.
That's just incredible. The amount of time commitment, the amount of dedication. And you're based in the States, right? So did you use a remote observatory, or did you find your way to somewhere you could see Aura?
No, actually, so that's a good question. So I work for an observatory, actually known as Deep Sky West. We have an observatory in New Mexico that I used for years, and now we've opened up one in Chile in the Atacama Desert, and that is actually where a majority of my data comes from nowadays, just because, like you said, I live in the States. And for those that don't know, the Southern Hemisphere and the Northern Hemisphere have completely different skies. So as someone who has seen, the same stars my whole life, suddenly getting access to a literal whole new world has just been an absolute game changer. And I see no reason to look at Northern Hemisphere objects for like the past year and a half. So that has really been where I've spent most of my time recently.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm gonna be watching that one close, come Saturday.
Oh, thank you, Brian. I'll try to. I'm sure it's somewhere on my my own Instagram. If you want to look on there, it's cosmic.spec. If you send me a message on there, I can shoot you over a message about when I posted it.
Hey, Connor, let me ask you, have you actually been down there to Chile, to Atacama?
No, I haven't, and that is actually on my list. I was actually invited to go down there for the solar eclipse. That was, what was that, 2 years ago, 3 years ago at this point, I think. But it's solar eclipse.
2019.
Yeah, it landed on the first day of grad school for me, and I just wasn't able to go. And honestly, I kind of looking back, I really wish I just put all my classes on hold and just went down there because I don't know when I'll get a chance to do that again.
Are there
Well, we
certain places in the world that are like the kind of like the mecca for people who are into this to go and shoot?
I would say that the Atacama is honestly probably the Mecca, at least for the Southern Hemisphere. That's where almost every observatory, at least in the Southern Hemisphere again, is located, just because the skies are pretty much as dark as they get. You're at a super high atmosphere, so you have not much atmosphere to actually shoot through between you and outer space. And because it's a desert, the humidity is super low. So it checks all the boxes in terms of what makes the absolute best, taking pictures and star observings. It's absolutely fantastic out there.
Yeah, you guys need to come down here. I'm in Argentina, so that's kind of like next door to Chile and Atacama. So yeah, we should definitely put like a start party on the calendar somewhere.
Hey, Space, nice to meet you.
Hello, this is epic. I'm obsessed. I really want one of these. Yeah, so cool. So cool.
Are you an astrophotographer as well?
Oh, hell no. I'm just I looked up a random astrology thing and I was called the day of the space voyager. So I just made that my Twitter profile.
Nice. But have you ever tried, or are you interested to try now that you learned a little bit more about it?
To try the photography.
Yeah.
I'm not a photographer. Like I would love to, but I don't think I have that kind of brain to get my head around it.
Oh, I think, like to become maybe like very skilled at it for sure, but to understand like basic concepts. For example,
Yeah.
I'm not any good at photography still, but like even after a few weeks in the NFT space and just learning some general guidelines from photographers, I actually enjoy taking photos with my phone now, whereas before I just didn't.
Yeah, I would love to get like a film camera and just start taking photos. I'd love to do. I don't know if you heard of an Australian photographer called oh shit, what's his name? Oh God, I'll have to come back. Total mental blank.
It's okay.
Oh shit, can't think his name.
But what's the general concept? It doesn't matter the name.
It's like he takes these amazing photos of like it's kind of like just the sun setting, and he'll just get like a glimpse of the sun coming through like a cliff or something, and it's just oh my god, it's amazing.
That's a good point, actually. I wanted to ask also the photographers. Can you shoot the sun in any way? Does anyone do that?
Yeah, there are actually these special filters you can get that let you look at the sun. There's a couple ways you can do it. There's a really cheap way where it's basically like a aluminum foil mylar film you throw over the front of your telescope, and that lets you just look at the sun in white light as your eye would see it if it could see it. And you can see sunspots, you can see little granules if you're zoomed in enough and have a clear enough atmosphere. But just like how with the deep sky, there's narrowband and natural light, there's also narrowband for solar observing. So I use a thing called a hydrogen alpha filter, which actually looks at the same hydrogen alpha that I would look at in a nebula, but it's a more specialized filter that can reject the heat from the sun. Without it, it would set my camera on fire. Like if you looked at it with no filter at all, it would make you go blind. But this filter lets you look at these filamentary details that show up on the chromosphere of the sun. So you can look at a more detailed layer of the atmosphere, and you can also see prominences, which are like planet-sized or many times greater than planet-sized storms and eruptions that happen on the sun.
That's awesome. Where did you guys hang out and connect before the NFT space?
Pretty much just through social media. I live pretty far from all these guys. I'm just familiar with them all through the astrophotography community prior to NFTs.
Was that like on Reddit or Twitter or forums?
Yeah, Instagram, Twitter, and a little bit on Reddit.
Okay, I think with the shift from Instagram, which is like not very good for engagement and collaboration, to Twitter and Discord, we're becoming so much more productive.
Yeah, at least for me, it's been great the shift from Twitter. I mean, I was following Bray on Instagram for like so many years, and now I'm on Twitter, and it's only 4 months, and now we're sharing a space together. That's for me, that's just incredible, and it's insane the amount of extremely talented astrophotographers I've connected with on Twitter and on NFTs as well. That's been really cool for me as well.
So I just posted, it's Bill Henson was the photographer I was thinking of, and I just posted it up top, but you have to click the link. He just does amazing, it's like dusk and like the sun's gone down, but there's still just little glimmers of light. It's amazing.
Nice.
Mm.
All right. So yeah, does anyone have any last things, or should we end it there?
I was just while Connor was talking about his image of the Dragons of Ara, I was just going to chip in and say that is one of my favorite images, and that is the image that actually made me look up where Dragons of Ara is and go shoot that. One of the questions I was going to ask is, because this is the only year when I started having enough gear to actually go for these really long sessions. How do you manage these really long hours of integration data? And it's probably a more technical question. So if you can give like an overview of it.
Yeah, so the long hours of integration is sort of an interesting one. I get a lot of questions a lot about, how do we combine all this data? And, you have your images where you have your software that aligns all your images based off the stars. And because stars don't move relative to one another, at least in our lifetime, like I was saying, we use those to align our images. But I would say, shooting the same thing every couple hours, like that's fine. Like you won't have many issues combining that. But whenever you're dealing with something that is, years apart, you really got to make sure your data is clean in terms of like making sure your calibration frames are absolutely like set, and they are, I don't want to reuse the same calibration frames, from like one year to the next, because, equipment changes, settings change. So it's getting the cleanest data you can before you combine it all is key. So I always suggest like doing as much cleaning as you can before you end up combining all your data to create your single final image.
Cool. So if you're going to keep stacking over years, would you keep stacking on top of the last final stacked image, or would you just start from the start, which probably doesn't make sense, but
No, yeah, that's another good question. I actually do that. So originally I made a Dragons of Ara after the first time I had shot it, and then it wasn't until 2 years later I went back, and after revisiting it and had more data on it, made a new image. And I didn't just make two images and then combine them and then go that way. I took all my raw data from 2 years ago and all my raw data from now, and then combined them all to make a single final image. I didn't sort of take the pieces that I had built along the way. I just started completely from scratch, and that is definitely the way you'll get the most out of your data.
cool. So just the last question: how long did you have to stay away from your computer while it was doing its registration and stacking for that many hours of data?
I actually built a a really nice computer, if only for processing my photos. It normally, when I would run like the PixInsight benchmark, I would say it would take me around 5 minutes to run it. And now it takes me around 20 some odd seconds. So this new computer that I've ended up with is really a workhorse. And I think in terms of processing, I normally knock out an image within 30 hours of editing data. Which it sounds like a lot, but for most astrophotographers, I would say that is something that a lot of us deal with is, tens of hours of just editing a single image.
Okay, well, that definitely sounds like a really grunty machine. Because my machine's like from 2017. It was pretty much top of the line at that time. But even if I'm integrating like 5-6 hours of data, I would have to just step away from it for at least half an hour or so. But nah, yeah, might just have the time to upgrade. Hey, thanks a lot for that.
My laptop can barely run PhD 2, so.
All right. Should we wrap it up? Thanks a lot, man. It's been super cool. I'm going to be paying attention to this. Please let us know the time and everything. And do you know, have you considered anything about like gas wars and stuff? Or it's just kind of like a free for all? How is that going to work? Do you have a reservation system?
Yeah, well, being like, I understand with all the other drops when there's like 10,000 items or something, there always tends to be a gas war, but the time that we've chose to drop that, it tends to avoid all the gas wars of those projects. So we shouldn't be clashing with we shouldn't be clashing with those gas wars. So we should be able to avoid those. In terms of like the reservations or something that you're talking about, that will be a free for all. So there's a fair chance for everyone to get an image. So there's going to be no pieces that are reserved for a buyer, essentially.
Cool. Hold on, I have one last request. Let's see if we can take one last question. Let's see, Santi. Hi, Santi Cab. How are you?
What's up, guys?
How's it going, man?
Everything good?
All good.
Yeah.
Did you want to ask a last question? We're kind of wrapping it up now, but if you want to ask one last question to anyone, please do.
No, I just want to say I love Caleb's work. I love his pictures. It's really inspiring.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. That means a lot. Appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. Just really enjoy your work, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, mate.
I just want to say a big thanks to Kenshiro as well for coming along and hosting the space. It's been awesome, and I really appreciate it, man. Thanks.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's really nice to meet all of you guys and seeing all these kind of I wouldn't say ignored, because you guys do have like niche communities who appreciate it. But I think as we educate people on like the amount of skill and time that goes into this, like they will see the value in it. So I think you guys are kind of like pioneers in bringing this. So I love innovation. So I'm more than happy to help out in any way I can. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. And I just want to say sorry for my bad English, but it's not my first language.
Oh, your English is fine, bro.
Your English is perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect, man. I didn't even notice it.
Okay, man. Well, I just hope everybody understands.
I have more trouble with Caleb's New Zealand accent.
Okay, man. Thanks for having us.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. All the best.
Thanks very
much.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.